The gear behind John Mayer's solos, episode 6, California Dreamin. California Dreamin for me personally has become, as of lately, one of my favorite John Mayer trio performances to actually listen to, and today we are going to be covering two different performances of this song with the trio. The one you are most likely familiar with is the performance on June 4th of 2009 on Conan O'Brien. The second one is from the joint New Year's Eve of 2009. Normally what happens in the series is we listen to the footage together, we watch the solo, and then I discuss the gear afterwards. However, with the Conan O'Brien performance, this is a performance that YouTube very consistently will take down. It's very hard to actually upload any footage of this at all without it getting flagged and then the video just completely blocked off of the platform. So what I believe I can do, however, as I believe the main issue is the footage, not the actual audio, is we're going to play the audio for you guys and then with some photos just of the performance and then discuss the gear afterwards, then move on to the actual footage we have from the joint as well and discuss kind of the differences and similarities between the two performances. Now, when it comes to the gear behind the performance of California Dreamin' on Conan, and hopefully you guys were able to actually listen to that performance, but don't worry, at the very least you'll listen to one solo performance of California Dreamin' in this video. But when it comes to that Conan gear setup, it was very simple, very stripped back, and John was more or less performing with his kind of core basics. The guitar for this performance was his Fender Custom Shop prototype Monterey Stratocaster. This guitar, if you're a Mayer fan, you know this guitar very, very well. Notably, it's a prototype version of the Monterey Pop Stratocaster, and John actually changed out the fretboard to Brazilian rosewood as well. But this guitar is just, it's very special if you're a John Mayer fan. So many great performances like Slow Dancing in a Burning Room on Where the Light Is. It's just a really cool guitar. Now, the amp setup was done with Steel String Singer 002 along with the Two-Rock John Mayer signature. Both of those amps together, kind of the Battle Studies era rig with the Alessandro cabinets as well. In terms of the speakers that were actually being used for this performance, it's rather hard to tell. John's used everything from Celestion Centuries, Celestion Golds, G1265s, Alessandro Neos, I believe, as well within these Alessandro cabinets. So for this specific performance, you really can't concretely say what John was using in terms of the speakers in those Alessandro cabinets, but something along those lines is what we would expect him to have had at that point. Now, when it comes to the pedals, which is kind of the main component of this solo tone, and I have a very good theory as to what John was actually doing, he didn't have a traditional pedal board setup or anything like that. Instead, he just had a few pedals on the floor, just in a very rudimentary setup, but this was kind of the basics in terms of a John Mayer trio pedal board setup. So for the pedals, and this shot, by the way, is just luckily a screen grab of when the camera goes above kind of John and you get an actual look as to what pedals he was using. We have a Boss TU2 for the tuner, an Ibanez TS10 going into the Klon Centaur, followed by a Way Huge Aquapus Mark I AP2 version. We know it's an AP2 version because John had a Lowmark tape that went across his Mark I AP2 version Aquapus. That's how we can identify what this version specifically is. in this shot here. And then he had an MXR carbon copy as well. Now, in terms of what pedals John was using for the solo performance, what I believe is going on is the Clon Centaur is on the entire performance, along with the Way Huge Octopus Mark I. It just doesn't make sense for the Octopus to have been brought out for the performance and then not have been used, in my mind. So I'm willing to bet that that Octopus is providing just that little bit of slapback that's kind of hard to hear in the footage, but hopefully you guys got to actually hear the footage, but that's what that would have been doing. Now, the solo would be the Ibanez TS10, and I say this because at the end of the performance, John, kind of as the band's kind of, you know, they're finishing the performance, John steps on the gain pedal again just to, you know, bring up his tone a little bit more for the last little few licks he plays, and then it ends. And at the very end, you see him stepping on the TS10, and that to me obviously indicates that the TS10 is what he's using for the actual solo booster tone to boost into the Clon Centaur. So Clon Centaur for the bass tone, Octopus on, then the TS10 is what John steps on first. Then you hear him step on a delay pedal, and that would be the MXR carbon copy. So pretty simple in terms of the formula there. Bass tone for the performance, Clon Centaur and Octopus. Then for the solo, add in the TS10 and the carbon copy. Now, one other thing that's kind of interesting about this performance, but it's also a bit weird, is that when it's panning during the footage, you actually can see a pedal on the floor of the cart that the amps are on beside the Alessandro cabinets that the Two Rock sits on. And it's a version 1 Keeley Katana. You can just make out what it is. So maybe in the entire setup they were going to use a Keeley Katana as well, and then they opted, nah, you know what, we're not going to use it, and they just put it beside the amps. We'll clean everything up after the show is done and we tear everything down. I believe that's probably what happened, but just worth noting that for whatever reason, there was a Keeley Katana beside the cabinets on that cart. Kind of weird, but kind of cool. All right, now we are going to take a listen to the joint performance of California Dreamin' New Year's Eve 2009. Alright, so the gear for the joint New Year's Eve performance is pretty similar to what we saw John using for Conan, but we're going to go over it all again. The guitar is the same, the Monterey Stratocaster, the Dumble Steel String Singer 002, along with the Two Rock John Mayer signature. Amp setup is exactly the same. Both of them, again, sit on two Alessandro cabinets. The top ones are mic'd again as well, but I can't say for certainty if John's using a similar setup in terms of the actual speakers that he was using during the Battle Studies era or not, or if he changed things up. For the trio shows, I can't say. So speakers, we really don't know for certainty what he was actually using. Now, the pedal board is where the changes do occur. John actually had a more traditional pedal board setup for these end of 2009 John Mayer trio shows, and the pedal board was pretty simple, but this is one of those unique cases where we actually see John using his three kind of core overdrives together on one pedal board. So the pedal board you are seeing here is not from the actual joint performance, but we believe it was the exact same setup for the entire kind of mini tour the John Mayer Trio was doing at the end of 2009. There's the Boss TU2, the Keeley Katana version 1, Clon Centaur, the Ibanez TS10, the Buddy Guy Dunlop Signature Wah pedal, the Octopus Mark I, assume the AP2 version. Again, it kind of looks like you can barely make out the reflective tape across of it. And then the Marshall Bluesbreaker Mark I. So this pedal board is really interesting because we are seeing kind of the 3 core John Mayer overdrive pedals on an actual physical pedal board. And the only other time I believe we've actually seen that is during the Dead & Company 2022 pedal boards, which featured the TS10, the Blacked Out Claw Centaur, and then the Marshall Bluesbreaker. But 2023 it would have been, because that pedal released last year. So the 2023 Dead & Company pedal board, when then John brought out the reissue Bluesbreaker, what we believe was the reissue Bluesbreaker on the pedal board. It's too coincidental to be anything other than the reissue being on the pedal board. But anyways, that's the setup that we are seeing here. In terms of signal chain, because we can actually see some of the cables, I believe it was Claw Centaur into the Buddy Guy Dunlop wah, into the TS10, into the actual Bluesbreaker Mark I. That's kind of what you're seeing in terms of the cables. If you trace them, that's what it looks like. Now, in terms of the pedals for the joint performance, I believe it's pretty similar to what we were hearing in the Conan performance of the song. The Claw Centaur would be the bass tone along with the Way Huge Octopus. Now, in this example, we can actually see John kind of looks down and steps on one pedal, and then steps on another one, and then the solo gets a lot louder. So what I think John is doing is stepping on both the Keeley Katana along with the TS10. So the solo is actually the entire kind of main Mayer overdrive setup of Keeley Katana into Claw Centaur into TS10 this time around. So all 3 of those would be on. I don't think he was stepping on the Bluesbreaker at all for those. I mean, it's possible he was stacking all 3 drives together instead, but there's definitely 3 gain pedals or overdrive boost pedals that are going on. There's 3 of them going on for this performance because you see him step on it twice. You have 2 kind of volume and gain jumps with everything that's going on. So what I believe here, Claw Centaur and Octopus bass tone, then add on the Keeley Katana and the TS10 for the solo, and then that's what we get. Turn both those back off again for the bass tone for the remainder of the performance. So slightly different, because the tone in this one definitely is a lot more, it's got more gain, it's got more volume, more punch to it for sure than the Conan performance. I definitely like the Conan tone better, but that's also because it was professionally kind of recorded, where this is just someone's footage getting blasted by the amplifiers in the front row, and of course, the sound of the venue. But I think even just from the level of gain and saturation in John's tone, I prefer the Conan one, but this one is still really good too, and I wanted to cover both of them, and at the very least allow you guys to hear at least one solo from a performance of California Dreamin that John did. And that concludes episode 6 of the Gear Behind John Mayer Solos. If you guys are enjoying the series, as always, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what other solo performances you'd like to see me cover in this series that I've been doing on the channel. I apologize that it's been a little while since the last episode. That whole every week thing kind of fell apart on me real quick, but I'm going to be making this series weekly from now on. I promise you guys I'll do the best that I can to make it a weekly thing for you all. But until the next episode, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.